Well, hello. Waiting for Facebook over here. This is Brittany Boles back with another chapter of my book, Finding Starlight. Finding Starlight is the story of my life as told through the lens of a past life regression session. This is a true story, so you might find that, especially if you know me in real life or particularly good at stalking, that you are able to identify some of the characters in this book. And that's okay, because we all, for the most part, the good guys, have a good relationship still, and they know that I wrote this. In fact, they were really encouraging about it. That being said, I'm trying to tell my story, not everybody else's story, and there are a lot of sides to the way that things happen. So I encourage you to understand that this is my perspective told in a way that healed me. Re-experiencing it in this way through a past life regression session, writing it, and now sharing it with you has been and continues to be an immensely healing journey for me. And that's why I'm sharing it. Of course, one day I hope that it will get discovered and published, but until then, I am offering it to you maybe as inspiration for you to embody your own story, maybe as a way of saying me too to you, or just making us feel heard in some way. So with that being said, here we are with chapter 23 of my book, Finding Starlight, which is unpublished and unsigned, and is being read by me aloud, one chapter, 1 week at a time, until it gets signed or published, or I finish it. Chapter 23, Love Like a Spotlight. This time, the cloud carried us back to the forest. When we were close enough to the ground, I eagerly hopped off and bounced to my mossy seat. Katrina whirled to her mushroom and propped her chin in her hands to stare at me with curious eyes. The cloud ran itself under the waterfall. That was probably the most magical night I ever had, I said to Katrina. After that, we lit a small fire on the beach while Adrian and Ty played music, and I danced the night away. We both sighed. Another time, I had injured my knee so severely that I couldn't walk. It was Thanksgiving, so Nikki and I went to a Friendsgiving pool party. I hobbled in on crutches, feeling a little badly for myself when I heard Ty shout, "Hello!" from the deck. It was high up, overlooking the pool. He ran down the steep spiral staircase to wrap me in a hug. Then he lifted me off the ground and swirled me around like a child. Returning to us, eager to join the fun, the cloud took up the scene. "Come on," Ty grinned. "We're all upstairs." Before I could protest or explain, he swept me full-bodied into his arms and carried me and my crutches up the staircase. He placed me on the ground next to Adrian. The three of us sat in our little nook, sharing stories, smoke, laughter, and rum with each other, and a rotation of passing friends. Music began to play, and Ty stood, reaching his hands down to me, drew me up for a dance. Since I couldn't put any weight on my leg, he held me off the ground ever so slightly and led us in a spinning waltz. I said to Katrina, watching tiny versions of my past self and Ty's dancing around the cloud, there were moments that I fancied myself in love with him. But when it came down to it, there was something entirely too pure and simple about our friendship to be bothered by love. No, I continued, almost to myself, deep in thought. Love tended to come in more intense packaging for me. The cloud shimmered, clearing itself for a new scene. I floated on a raft in an opulent ocean view pool. The deck was situated on a small mountain overlooking an offshore island. Palm trees and flowering plants bloomed, and the sun was high in a clear blue sky. It was another typical, perfect, beautiful Caribbean day. Sitting on the steps was a tanned and shirtless, confident and muscular man with his intense gaze locked directly on to my bikini-clad body. His shaved head and tattooed arms contrasted boyish good looks and an infectious smile. "Matt," I said as he swam up to me, "did you know that I made a list after I read The Law of Attraction?" "A list of what?" he asked. "Of qualities I wanted in a man," I answered. "He had to be charming, creative, intelligent, intuitive, open-minded, deep, funny, interesting, well-traveled, and all these other things that you just happen to be." "Oh, really?" he asked, one very satisfied eyebrow arched. The cloud changed to my apartment, which I shared with Nikki and Amber. We sat outside on our open-air deck, which I had transformed into my bedroom. We were chatting. We didn't quite have an ocean view, but we could almost see the sea in the distance over our many fruit trees. "So, Matt's pretty great?" Nikki asked. "Yeah, it definitely seems that way, doesn't it?" I responded. "What do you mean, seems that way?" Nikki was tuned in to my uncertainty. "Well," I explained, "he's obviously great in a lot of ways. We have so much fun together. He is in love with me. He treats me like a queen." "Just like Rostapal said," she reminded me. I nodded with hesitation and said, "Yeah, that's true. Except there's something sort of possessive about the way he is with me, and it makes me nervous. He's a musician and a performer, and I think it can be tough sometimes to tell what else is underneath." "He loves you," Nikki gushed. "He is so great. Me and Amber love him. You need to just relax and enjoy the moment. You guys clearly have something strong between you." Nikki wagged her eyebrows to imply sexy things. That's not always exactly true either, I thought, but didn't say. "You're right, we do have a great time together," I did say, still uncertain. In the present moment, Katrina looked at me with a sharp question in her eyes. The cloud cleared itself, shifting around as if it was impatient to continue the story. "Things between Matt and I were explosive," I explained, almost apologetically, in answer to Katrina's inquisitive look. "It was a rock and roll sort of romance. We stayed out late, drank a lot, and kept up with a fast crowd. We were good-looking, self-supporting, freedom-loving people who believed in the same laws of the universe. We each had a positive attitude and a feel-good nature, and that brought us a lot of adventure. One weekend, he cleared his performance calendar to take me on a trip to the other Virgin Islands. We rode a seaplane there, which was terrifying, and then spent the night in St. Thomas with a couple of friends. This psychic happened to live next door to our friends and offered to give me a reading, just out of the blue. It was intense. Like, so intense. The cloud jumped right in with a silent illustration. A woman in her young 30s with auburn hair and vivid eyes sat with us at a small kitchen table in a studio apartment. Candles burned around the room, and an overhead light was casting shadows on the many tarot cards strewn between us. I smiled in thanks at this amazing helper, my little cloud. Because the scene appeared to us without any sound, I continued explaining it. The woman channeled my mom's spirit. We realized that she didn't even understand that she was dead. I had to explain it to her via the psychic. She appeared as that oh-so-familiar black shadow and gave the psychic a very clear message that I was never there for her. If she was dead, it was because I abandoned her and never cared. That made me really angry. But before I could lash out, she made, on the cloud, wind blew in through the windows, just blowing the cards around the table. The lights flickered on and off a few times, and the front door slammed. The lights flicker. Yeah, I said, shaking my head. And with that, she left us. The psychic told me that she had never experienced anything so palpable before. I was like, that's my mom. In the room, Matt was agitated and pacing. I got up and had a brief conversation with him. He left, and I sat back down at the table. After Matt left, because he said he couldn't handle it, we did a whole bunch of readings. Or one super long reading, I guess. She told me that my aura was enormous and that I had Christ-like energy and that I was sent here to bring light into the world. On the cloud, a vivid purple and white light blossomed out from my head and all around my body, filling nearly the entire room. The red-haired psychic was gesturing at it and speaking excitedly. I was smiling bashfully and shaking my head in disbelief. Wow, so that's what she saw? I was awed. In Arizona, more times than I can count, people would stop me in weird places, like the grocery store, and tell me that they could see my purple aura. I guess they were right. So strange to see it myself after all this time. You have come here to see things in a new light, Katrina reminded me. And that I am doing, I agreed. I love telling you these stories with the help of our little friend here, I said, waving my hands above the cloud. It's amazing how much I've forgotten and what I didn't realize what was important at the time. Hindsight is always 20/20, they say, she said. But I say that cloud sight is a million. That's perfect, I smiled. Innocent humor is the best. The cloud rippled to get our attention. Okay, sorry, I grinned. The psychic and I were in deep conversation, and I kept glancing out the door through which Matt had left. We talked about Matt and my relationship, and she was fairly cryptic, saying that he loved me a lot, and all I had to do was look into my heart to see the truth. I confided. I didn't understand. Or should I say, I didn't want to understand that one until much later. Another silent gust of wind blew papers and cards off the table. This time the candles were extinguished, but burst back into life almost immediately. After a few hours, my mom's spirit came back, much less angry than before. The psychic said that she, Mom, had gone to check on Amber to see if I was really telling the truth about her being all grown up now. When she saw my sister, she realized that she, Mom, must be dead. The psychic said that my mom turned all black and distant and then showed her an image of my hand holding hers as she slept. The cloud showed us with the same vision. The cloud showed us the same vision, and tears sprang to my eyes, which I quickly wiped away. Next thing we knew, I said, a card flopped out of the deck, informing us that my loved one had moved on to the other side. My mom had finally recognized that I was there for her the whole time, that she was, in fact, dead. And then, somehow, she was able to let go and move past the anger and the hurt that she was holding on to. After that, the nightmares ended. Wow, Katrina breathed. Wow. What an amazingly powerful woman that psychic must have been. And you, how very serendipitous that you would meet her in this way. Believe me, I know, I nodded emphatically. That night was incredible, but Matt was so weird about the whole thing. He got uncomfortable and left to go hang out with our friends after my mom showed up, and then he was all sad and grumpy when I got back. He didn't even want to hear about it. The next day, we woke up early. Well, that's relative, I admitted. He was a musician and I was a fire dancer, so by early, I guess I mean maybe a little before noon. We woke up and took the ferry over to St. John. The first night there, we made friends with a local guy who sold us some drugs and walked us to a secluded beach where he said that we could camp. We stayed up all night drinking and, well, you know, the cloud was playing along, jumping from scene to scene like a slideshow on an old projector. That next morning, we really did wake up early because a frickin' park ranger was banging on the tent. We had empty bottles and a makeshift fire pit right outside, and we were not in good shape at all. He wrote both of us tickets for illegally camping on state park property and told us to pack up and leave immediately. We made the best of the day, though. We rented a little dinghy and boated all around to different beaches. And then we spent the night at a proper campground, which we snuck into. It was ridiculous, and so us. Something about that weekend overwhelmed me. Before we went to bed on the last night, I found myself telling him I loved him. He cried. He had already been telling me for weeks and just so badly wanted to hear it back. That's sweet. Katrina was skeptical. It was, but it, like most of our relationship, didn't feel quite genuine to me. It wasn't long after our trip that we moved in together. Cloud showed us a glimpse of the huge white and pink house that Matt and our roommates and I shared. Island life, especially for us, was a blend of constant vacation, hosting, and performing. We shared our home and our lives with a rotating cast of visitors. We were constantly in public mode. We had a lot of fun. I could tell a million stories about our adventures together. Katrina gave me the please don't look, so I laughed. Okay, I won't. But as I'm sure you've guessed, there were times we took it a little too far, and they always ended badly. We would have these horrible fights, screaming at each other and lashing out. I started to have serious doubts about our relationship. Meanwhile, he was falling more in love with me. It was a tumultuous, passionate time for the two of us. At one point, not long after meeting that psychic, I felt my spirit calling for a change. First, I wanted to go to Haiti to help with the aftermath of that big earthquake. It was like I needed to go. Matt talked me out of it. Then I discovered an ashram in India, in the mountains of Tamil Nadu, that accepted me as a student for as long as I wanted to stay. I told Matt, and he was heartbroken. He begged me to stay long enough to help him finish his album, so I did. I shook my head, remembering. What made it so heart-wrenching was that we needed each other at the time. Together, we were trying to fill the void that we experienced as individuals. I grew to admire and love Matt for so many parts of himself, even as I realized that he did not resonate with who I was or what I really wanted, even though it very much appeared that he and I were so in love. There was a major disconnect behind closed doors. You keep talking about how it appeared, Katrina pointed out. Why is that? You don't seem to me like someone who spends a lot of time worrying about what other people think. I'm not, I agreed. But during the time that Matt and I were together, you have to remember that my family was on island. Amber had moved down there to be with Nikki and me and get the hell out of Minnesota, understandably. We were finally getting close again after me moving out and all. Nikki had her own drama going on with her man. We all leaned on each other. And they loved Matt. Amber considered him a brother, and he and Nikki were totally on the same team. Anytime I even mentioned having doubts, one or both of them would remind me what a great guy he was and how happy I was now compared to in the past. It was a compelling argument. Matt was, and still is in many ways, a fantastic guy. Any girl would be lucky to have him. The cloud shifted once again to an image of me and Emily sitting on the pier overlooking the sunset. We were pensive, discussing our respective relationships. After I tried to break up with him for the second or third time, I actually did move out of our shared house. Amber and Nikki had both already left the island, so I was living with Emily. Emily's long, thick, dark brown hair flowed in the wind behind an oval-shaped face with slanted brown eyes, an aristocratic nose, and perfectly shaped lips. Her smile was compassionate, her eyes honest and searching. Emily was the best friend I had always hoped for, but didn't know existed. She was intuitive, loyal, caring, and steady. I used to joke and call her Mom because she was definitely the responsible one. But man, did she love me. She was never afraid to call me out either. She told me what she thought of my partying and of my not-so-genuine relationship with Matt. Emily was the first and maybe only person who actually saw him the way that I did, and who recognized that he didn't really see me at all. From the pier, with a voice like maple syrup and Irish whiskey, Emily asked, "What would you do if you weren't afraid of anything?" "I would break up with Matt and start over," I replied. She wrapped me in a hug and kept her arm around my shoulders as we watched the sun disappear into the sea. To Katrina, I said, "Eventually, things got out of control between Matt and me. I told him that we needed a serious break. At that exact moment in my life, I met someone who jarred me so emphatically that it forever altered my direction." And that concludes chapter 23 of my book, Finding Starlight. The unpublished but true story of my life, told how I remember it through the lens of a past life regression session. I will share next week's chapter, A Love Like Fire, on Thursday night. And until then, out there in the world, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, however crazy, passionate, chaotic your life is, may you find something to hold on to in yourself. And may you always know the answer to that question: what would I do if I wasn't afraid of anything? And then understand that courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to act, even in the face of fear. So thank you for being with me as I share these super vulnerable and intimate moments of my own life, and rooting for me to get published. Until next time, see you out there, be safe, and namaste.